both marijuana and hemp. I would love to see that fully legal across the country, because not only are we seeing the benefits on the medicinal side of things, but we're also seeing incredible economic impact and, less people being put in prison. And from a systemic and foundational level, it's such a no-brainer, and this is where the frustration comes in. It's just the powers that be certainly have plenty of reasons not to legalize this.
There's a lot of money to be made in ibuprofen and in anxiety drugs and, all the other pharmaceuticals that address the exact same things that hemp does.
The fact that, cocaine is a class 2 drug and marijuana and hemp, you could smoke a garbage bag full of hemp and the most you'd get is maybe a headache. You're not going to get high. And the fact that that's a Schedule 1 drug is just staggering.
That's Rhett Taylor and Adriaan Zimmerman, and this is episode 233 of Wellness Force Radio. What's up, my friend? It's your host, Josh Trent, and welcome back to another episode for your weekly access to global experts in all things wellness as we discover the physical and emotional intelligence we need to live life well. In this podcast, we're talking about healing the human through a well-known yet often misunderstood and powerful plant called hemp. And no, I'm not talking about marijuana. I'm talking about a plant that for the past 80 years has been federally banned in the USA. But due to decades of clinical research and public outcry, the 2018 Farm Bill will include hemp legalization. Now, hemp has been grown as far back as the 17th century and up until 1937, when oligopoly businesses and paper mills came together to demonize hemp because it threatened their businesses. But as scientific research and the data is showing, hemp oil, with its healing power and even better full-spectrum hemp oils containing no psychoactive properties. You do not get high from this stuff. You get well. These are showing a range of active cannabinoids, each carrying their distinct healing property. This is why I felt deep down after the past 3 months, it was time to finally bring on experts to the show to talk about this, because what I'm seeing now across the wellness industry is that we're essentially in a wild, wild west when it comes to CBD and hemp. So I cannot wait for you to hear this story of these two men that came together after experiencing a dark contrast in the concrete jungles of New York to eventually let go of all their flashy clothes and high-paying jobs, to leave that all behind, circle the globe, and then make it back together to meet an almost mythical organic farmer in the fields of Colorado named Farmer Kurt. You're going to want to go to the show notes for this episode. They're found at wellnessforce.com, as well as an awesome hookup from Ned if you've been curious about hemp oil for healing and you've been learning about the health promoting benefits online from friends. This show is the best one for you right now. We talk about why CBD and hemp oil can be used as a first line of defense naturally. We expose the common myths and misconceptions about hemp and CBD, the endocannabinoid system, how hemp oils can synergistically help us in homeostasis. That's the balancing act of our biology and our psychology and our physiology. We also talk about using hemp oil in combination with other wellness modalities and why this is not for hippies anymore. This is for weekend warriors, athletes, professionals, moms and dads, people like you and me that are looking for ways to decrease anxiety and stress or emotional distress so we can live our life well. I know you're going to dig both Rhett and Adriaan's story. They have been through their own hero's journey to make it to us today. They were kind enough to give the Wellness Force audience a great discount, 10% off. Give their product a test drive. If you've been looking for a tool to help with stress, you've been researching about CBD and hemp, all you have to do is go to helloned.com, enter code WellnessForce, you'll get the 10% off. Just go to helloned.com and enter code WellnessForce, and you'll get 10% off your test drive of the hemp oil. Now, let's hear from these two guys behind Ned, Adriaan Zimmerman and Rhett Taylor. Let's drop in. I am Josh Trent. This is Wellness Force, and my guests today are the founders of Ned, a revolutionary natural health company specializing in CBD, who are both on a mission to find the best natural remedies from around the world and to create a better first line of defense for health. Now, both of these men are veterans in the business world who met in New York around 5 years ago, while one of them was wearing Vibram five-finger shoes on Saturdays in Central Park swinging on trees. But they formed a friendship around a shared experience of personal transformation through the power power of health. Both of them on paper, they had it all. In Manhattan, flashy clothes, high-paying jobs, status, and title. But they found in their own unique journeys that burnout and health complications were part of the Manhattan lifestyle that they were not willing to stand for. Through these two unique stories of hardship, travel, cancer, and triumph, they both left the Big Apple behind and went on a solo spiritual quest to find the answers, which we're talking about today on the podcast, the answers about how to have a life based in connection, contribution, and abundance of health, wealth, and relationships. Today, we're exploring why CBD is this first line of defense for better health, who it's for, and why CBD is the next revolution in health. Welcome Rhett Taylor and Adriaan Zimmerman to Wellness Force.
Thank you, Josh. What an intro.
You know, this is your first podcast. I feel very honored that you guys came in from Colorado today. What's your experience of San Diego?
Well, I mean, it was great to touch down here. Rhett and I have both spent a lot of time here in, our past lives, whether it's for work or for play. And it's always nice to be back.
Yeah. We got here a little bit early. And, I love California trees. So about 45 minutes ago, I was up in a tree, climbing that tree.
We have the Torrey Pines here in San Diego, one of the few places in the world where they grow. What's unique about Colorado? You guys live in Colorado now, or where do you both live?
Yeah, both in Colorado.
Near the farm, which we're going to talk about, this first line of defense. I've been diving into CBD myself, 18 months now. It's the wild, wild west. Mm-hmm. Today, we're going to talk about the myths, the misconceptions. There's a lot of BS info out there about CBD, but I think what's really cool about this podcast is both you guys have been through an evolution of self. Real true transformation of, as I said in the intro, like triumph and overcoming really incredible odds to actually be a CBD company now. Let's set the mark though. I think earlier this year, the World Anti-Doping Agency removed CBD from the banned substances. So more and more athletes now are using CBD for pain and relief instead of opioids and instead of ibuprofen. So where are we at now, you guys, like with the state of the union for CBD? Like, give us just a brief snapshot of the legal aspects of CBD. Like, what's going on there?
Sure. The best way to talk about it is it's still murky waters. There is the kind of mainstream acceptance of it now to a certain extent, but there is still this 7-pointed leaf stigma that carries from cannabis. And even though cannabis is also in its own right being accepted on a broader level, with the Farm Bill, which basically allows for industrial hemp to be distributed across the country, it's allowing more and more people to have this medicine in their hands.
I think the interesting part too is that CBD, a lot of people don't know this, we have an endocannabinoid system in our body. And, maybe we can talk a little bit about when CBD became vilified. I think it was somewhere around the paper mill with a few rich people in the 30s. But we know that the endocannabinoid system, without these natural healing pieces from the plants, our body can truly suffer. And you look at the amount of meat that's consumed in the world right now, the way that we're, as we talked about with Paul Chek, not caring about our outer environment, not caring about our inner environment. Mm-hmm. The endocannabinoid system, we're going to get into your guys' stories, but someone talk about this endocannabinoid system, because a lot of people maybe know that, I guess, plants are good for them, but they may not know exactly how this system functions.
Yeah. Well, the endocannabinoid system is something that goes back to prehistoric beings. I think it's either 50 million years ago or maybe 500 million years ago. And we just found out about it about 20 years ago. So it regulates, many, many different types of, help me out here, Adriaan.
Yeah, biological systems in our bodies. It's a major regulatory system that just helps kind of manage homeostasis in our bodies. So, cannabinoids are found naturally in breast milk. It's one of those things that, humans are consuming from our earliest days. And it really manages the balance of, pretty much, you could call it almost every major biological system in our bodies. So, as with many other compounds that a lot of us are missing these days, due to soil degradation in agriculture and, our diets and all these other factors that are just prevalent in our lives, we don't have balance in our systems. So the discovery of the endocannabinoid system and this whole movement around medical cannabis, medical hemp, we're just unearthing more and more every day. And, there's still a lot of mysteries. Like, we know THC pretty well, we know CBD pretty well, but there are all these other cannabinoids that we're still learning about.
Yeah, today we'll focus on the CBD portion because, as you said, there's so many things to talk about. I think this is why we're seeing such a swell of information and interest in CBD, is because we're in this exciting time in the health and wellness industry. I think if we look across the full spectrum of health and wellness, I don't think right now in Q4 of 2018, there's something that's being spoken about any more than CBD. I think it's probably the hottest topic in everyone's website and on their blogs. And there's a lot of people right now just trying to make money with CBD. Your company, Ned, it's got such a cool brand. There's a farmer that backs it all. Would you mind, Rhett, telling us the story about how you even met this farmer?
Yeah. It was a great moment for me, actually. It goes all the way back to 2015 when my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, and they caught it really early, and thankfully it was in a good place. She had a double mastectomy. She had great doctors, and those doctors told her, we would like you to do chemo, and we can take your chance of recurrence from 17% down to 12% by doing that chemo. And she thought quite a bit about that. And we all did, the entire family did. And at the same time, I was, sorry, I'm remembering it very clearly.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people deal with this, so it's I honor the fact that you even want to talk about it.
Yeah, well, thank you. So she said, instead of doing chemo, instead of just thrashing my body for the next 4 or 5 months, giving myself that 15% chance of bringing my cancer cells down, I'm going to instead, I've decided to just eat much healthier, to be healthier, to act healthier, and to fight cancer through a natural path. And so I asked her, I said, that's great, Mom, but what does that mean to you? And she said, I'm just going to eat more lettuce and salads, and I'll drink more water. I said, well, what kind of water? Tap water. And what kind of lettuce? And, just lettuce.
This is the answer for most people. I'll just eat the healthy foods, not knowing the actual integrity of the foods.
Exactly. So, and I, at that point, 2015, I've been paleo. I've been around, nutrition for about 10 years at this point. And I said, well, that's just not really good enough for me. And so living in Boulder, Colorado, where every single person is a health expert and health nut, and you can get advice on everything from, what is the best lettuce to shamanic journeys and many other things. So I did a deep dive in the winter of 2015 into 2016. And I found as many mentors as I could, which again were abundant in Boulder. And the one thing that kept coming up over and over was CBD, really more full spectrum hemp oil, which contains CBD and all the other compounds. So I started buying the products, the brands that were on the market, and I was sending them to her in North Dakota. And then later when she moved to Dubai, I was sending them there. But I couldn't relate with any of these brands. I didn't know where they were growing their hemp. I didn't know how they were extracting it. I didn't know what kind of people they were, what their ethics were, and what their reasons were around creating their brands. And around this time, so last summer, around June, I started thinking to myself how cool it would be to create a private label for my mom and I and my friends. And if nothing else, it would be neat for me to go and meet hemp farmers. And so I started traveling all over Colorado, out east, down south, up north. And I met with several different, I think I met with 7 different hemp farmers all over Colorado. And, all great guys, all good farmers, beautiful crops. But what I was seeing was that they were growing their plants very much like their soybeans or their corn. And, they had been corn farmers for generations, and now they were dabbling into hemp. And
it's a lot of pesticides as well.
Yeah,
this is one of the safety concerns with CBD is pesticide amount.
Exactly, and those were questions I was asking these guys. And after the fifth and sixth guy, and then the seventh, I was like, well, maybe there isn't an organic, a really well-grown hemp crop here, because these guys all came highly recommended. But at the same time, I kept hearing about this like mythical farmer in this place called Paonia, Colorado. And Paonia is, if you know farming, you know Paonia. It's the place where the Japanese pay like $75 for a peach. It's it's got this amazing microclimate that's the same as Kansas. The dirt comes from an amazing ancient riverbed. It's got 330 days of sun. The water is coming straight off the Rocky Mountains. And some of the most talented farmers in the world have flocked there. So I kept hearing about this farmer there. And everybody knew who he was kind of, but everybody was like 2 degrees separation from him. And then finally it turned out that my sister Catherine knew him. And she eventually got his phone number and connected us. And right around this time last year, so late September-ish, I connected with him, and he invited my daughter, my wife, and I up to his farm, and we went.
What did he look like? Like, it just sounds like a mythical being.
Yeah.
Did he have like a corncob pipe and overalls? Like, what is it? It's hemp, right? Hemp is the farm.
Well, he has 12 acres just outside of Paonia, right on the foot of Mount Lambourne. And it's a beautiful 12 acres, but he really only farms about an acre. At that time, he was only farming 1 acre. So I drive up, and immediately I know he's our guy. I mean, I see the prayer flags, and I see his crop. And then he comes out, and what did he look like? He looked like Kurt, the farmer. He at the time, he had these great long braids and checkered Vans, and he looks like you would expect a hemp farmer to look.
This man has been probably an inspiration to the underbelly of the whole company, right? This connection to the farmer. For people that have never even heard of NED, Adriaan, what exactly is NED? I introduced it as a revolutionary natural health company because I think that's what it is based on my experience. But I'd love for you to describe, how do you say NED, and what do you say NED is if you're in an elevator with someone?
Yeah, well, I say NED is a wellness brand that's really just committed to our mission, which is to help people feel better and live better through much simpler means and a much deeper connection to the natural world. And going back to Kurt, I mean, he was a representation of that. He was a guy who had spent a lot of time all over the place and comes from a family of farmers. And, as he entered like later adulthood, he's now just about 40, I think now, right, Brett? He got to a point where he just wanted his land, and he wanted to do something that he could feel good about. And when you hear him talk about the healing powers of hemp and what he's doing every day in his fields, and how he, why he literally walks around his field playing reggae to his plants, is because he thinks that every little kind of contribution and every consideration and every energetic infusion, every tone that these plants hear goes into the development of something superior and something better and something that holds healing power.
This is fascinating because just a few months ago, there was a study at a major university. We'll link this in the show notes. And there was a plant that was placed in a hallway. And right next to it, there was another plant. One of the plants was bullied and cursed at and had a bunch of like hateful energy shot to it. But the other plant was loved, and it had like hugs, and people were giving it positive affirmations. After a few months, one of the plants started growing towards the ground, the one that was receiving the hate. I think it's fascinating that plants can receive energetic infusions, and the results are the proof of the pudding. One of the things you guys do is, I love this on your site, you say, everything in life is vibration, Albert Einstein. And that's been mentioned a couple times on Wellness Force. We know about the law of vibration. But from seed to bottle, these hemp products, they are infused with love and gratitude and positive vibrations. What exactly is this? You use binaural beats at 35 and 7.83 hertz, played to each bottle? Tell us about the science of this.
Yeah. Well, the science is not necessarily what many scientists would call science. It's more of a, medulla oblongata science than it is a prefrontal cortex where we can completely logically write it down. But, there's many, many, many experiments like that with the plant. And I think the biggest, most famous example is the New York Times bestseller, The Hidden Messages in Water. The Hidden Messages in Water.
Yeah. And this is Morimoto or someone like that.
Dr. Morimoto.
Yeah, Morimoto.
Yeah. And he showed that water can receive energy, and the frequencies that are given to it dictate how it behaves. And so we talk about this book a lot, and it's really the foundation of that science that we have used. And whether or not it works, we believe it does, and a lot of our biggest believers, our customers, believe it works as well. And when they hear that we do that, when they hear that we also use binaural beats to infuse the Schulman resonance, which is the resonance of the earth, which is that 7.83, and then also the 3.5 hertz, which is a very grounding, healing, affirming resonance, or frequency rather.
On your site, you list this as the Schumann's resonance. This is more of a focus, a balance, and a calm. This 7.83 hertz, a healing frequency, very similar and connected to the Earth's magnetic field.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking to the right audience, because we know about the power of things that can't be seen but can be felt.
Mm-hmm.
So in science, there's a war between science and religion, and the analytical mind versus the spiritual mind. They are connected. And I think what I get from you guys, which is very different, I've come across a lot of CBD companies lately especially, you have a much more grounded approach, a much more connected approach to this being a business, but also being a respect to Mother Earth. Can you articulate this connection between, making money, because let's make money. That's how we live in this game, in this world. But also, how do we make money with CBD? How do you guys plan on doing this? And then also honoring Mother Earth at the same time.
Yeah, well, we started this company because Rhett and I had both been in positions where we were making money, and we were living these lives that we were thought to believe is what we should aspire to. And, each in our own ways found ourselves living these lives and just, empty and miserable and questioning, existence. Like these existential questions that started coming up for me personally when I was about 30, completely threw into question everything I had been raised to know and everything I had been taught to know. And I found myself there at 30 and having checked off all these boxes that I'd set off to accomplish in my 20s. And, I was living this life in New York where I had my sweet bachelor pad, and I had loads of dates, and I had my New York Rangers season tickets, which was like a childhood dream come true. And I was living this life that I thought I wanted, and I just came out the back end of it just empty. And, I was living this life that was really relegated to Lower Manhattan. I would have my business trips, and I'd be jet setting on the weekends, but at the end of the day, that there was no connection to nature. And I'd grown up going to my grandparents' farm in Finland every summer. My mother's side is Finnish, and grew up on 4 acres where most of my time was spent outside. And by the time I was 30, I'd completely severed this connection to the natural world. So having lived this life in New York, I was totally struggling because, you work so hard to accomplish this person and build this identity that, in essence became this life raft for me, and questioning that completely threw into question what I was here for. And
you got to the top of the mountain and you were like, is this it? Is this all there is?
Yeah,
How
very
many
much.
thousands of people listening can relate to that?
Totally.
You get to this goal that you think is going to be great, and then it's so anticlimactic.
Yeah. So, I was sitting there, and I had been advising a company out in the UK that had turned into probably the most prolific digital media company in Europe. And, I was like, okay, well, it's definitely the place. It's not the person. So let's go to the UK, and everything's going to be all right. I'm going to make a bunch more money. And then I'm just going to all my worries will go away. It was great for about a month. And then I just started waking up with that same feeling of, holy shit, my life is not my own. Time is just slipping away. And I'm just lost. And, I just suppressed that feeling as long as I could. And then, you talked about sledgehammer moments with us. My sledgehammer moment was about 6 months into that gig. I was presenting in front of the entire company. I was sitting as the executive director, so, leadership role in that company. And, started my presentation just as I would any other. And halfway through, my hand started to shake and my voice started to go. And this overwhelming fear took over. And I was looking out at this room of my employees who were all friendly, great, young, vibrant people. And I just found no solace in that whatsoever. And just this transpired, this full-blown panic attack in front of the entire company as a leader.
Did you pass out? You feel like you couldn't breathe? Or what
I did not pass out, thankfully. I managed to choke out some more words and just, basically turned a 10-minute presentation into about a minute and 18 seconds and just walked back to my chair in utter confusion. I had never had a panic attack before. And I just had no way to reconcile, like, what just happened. And, 2 days later, I broke out in shingles. The entire right side of my body was like in a rash. And I went to a doctor and he just said, have you been under a lot of stress? And it was probably the first time I actually stopped to take inventory of that. Have I been under a lot of stress?
This is what led you to India, was having this shingles event and going through all this. And this is where people listening can connect to this. The emotions that are unprocessed. I mean, Bruce Lipton calls it the issues are in the tissues for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in India, like, what did you learn there? What did you?
Yeah. Well, I, within about 2 weeks of that moment, I was out the door of the company in the UK. Like, back then I was saying it was mutual, but I got fired. You got
the gift of being fired.
Yeah, they didn't want me there anymore.
Yeah.
I was this hotshot from New York that they brought in to take their company to another level, and this collapse that just completely threw that into question. So they bought me out. I was all of a sudden left there with, for the first time in 10 years, no email to answer to, no presentation to put together, no spreadsheets or whatever it might be. And it was on this little road trip after a wedding in Seattle that I, for the first time and probably since college, I took time to just be outside. I was road tripping by myself from Seattle to where my parents live in Northern California. And I was camping and hiking and, sleeping under the stars and just all of a sudden feeling this entire like crazy lift where, I could breathe again. And this first moment really happened in the Redwoods where I was just walking and I was like, okay, well, if I leave the UK, like what's going to happen with taxes? And what if I want to go do this like travel thing, like what's going to happen? And all of a sudden I just stopped in my tracks and I was looking up at these massive redwood trees and I heard insects. I heard the wind in the leaves. I saw streaks of light coming down from the trees and I just stopped in my tracks and I cried. And I think I cried because it was the first time I could release in that long. And I was stepping away from this identity that had consumed me for so long. So sorry, that's a total tangent to get to.
No, I could visualize you in front of this redwood with the insects completely sober and just having a threshold experience.
Well, not totally sober.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Well, we never know on Wellness Force, right?
Yeah.
So you're standing there and then I want to pause the tape on your story because this culmination of like Manhattan, brick and mortar, having a panic attack, going to the nature, going back to the source, that's really, to put on pause with your story, also a mirror of Rhett's story. So Adriaan's standing there in front of the tree. At that moment, where were you? Because his evolution was different than yours, but yet you guys came together in the future.
Yeah. Well, I left New York and moved to Saudi Arabia, where my first job had been, and I was asked to come back and start a business there. And it was going to be, work here for 5 or 10 years, and then you're done. You
were going to retire early.
Yeah, I was going to be retired by 40, and my wife, my brand new wife, was down with that. Bless her heart. And so I head over there, and our daughter had just been delivered as well. And I was supposed to have them there very quickly turned into almost more than a year of me waiting for their visas. And in the meantime, I'm just absolutely doing amazing business. Things are flying, and I'm working with princes and CEOs, and I mean, it couldn't have been better. But at the same time, I was away from my brand new family, and I missed my daughter's first steps. It was a year and a half, and I used to wake my wife up laughing all the time, at least twice a month. And she'd say, "You did it again. You woke me up. You were laughing," and that's my MO. I'm pretty damn happy. But when I woke up for the second time in about a week, crying, when I was in Saudi Arabia in this huge house that was supposed to be for the family, and I was all by myself on this mattress on the floor, I said, "Man, that is it." And I flew to the Netherlands where my wife and daughter were. And yeah, we had a lot of options at that point, and we looked at many of them, San Diego being one of them. But Boulder was really calling me. Colorado was calling me. The mountains were calling. And I had ignored that for so long. And I eventually listened to it. And it has been the best thing I've ever done, because that put me into a state where I was able to then eventually, a year later, really see who I truly am and what is truly important to me. And that happened in the summer of 2015, when the lease ran up on our house and my wife and daughter were going home to the Netherlands for 2 months. And I said, why would I get a new place on July 1st? Why don't I just get it 2 months later? And I'm going to sell my BMW, and I'm going to buy a Toyota 4Runner, and I'm going to throw my tent and my sleeping bag and my fishing rod and my bike in the back, and I'm going to live out of that. And I did, and it was amazing. And I lived in Aspen and Telluride and in the tops of mountains, and eventually made my way over into Utah. And the whole time I'm working, I've got this whole outdoor office set up with all the gadgets I would need to be completely connected. So I didn't miss a beat with work. At the same time, I've got this goal of being inside as little as possible. And in that 2 months, I might have spent maybe 45 minutes inside, and that would have just been to pay for gas or something like that.
It had to have also been challenging, though, because here you are, coming from a palace with princes and sheiks, and then now you're separated from your family, living in a van, basically, down by the river. So, so there's this situation.
Yeah.
What were you going through emotionally?
Yeah, I was having the best time ever. I was finally I knew I was getting close to figuring out who I was, and I sensed that there was something big coming. And so I went to the desert in Utah, which is, I know I have had many past lives there, and there's a calling for me from that place.
Zion? Is that the park that you went to?
Yeah, Zion's beautiful, but way too crowded for me. So I was in Grand Staircase Escalante National Park, or National Monument rather, which has become, unfortunately, more famous than it used to be because of Trump. But we won't get in politics. But yeah, so I was out in the middle of nowhere, and it all kind of came to me, which is, here I am healing myself through nature. I've always done this. Even when I've lived in the biggest cities in the world, New York, Sao Paulo, Riyadh, Boston, Miami, I always sought out those very natural places.
Were you the guy climbing on trees in all those cities, and people were like, who's this dude in the trees wearing the Vibrams?
Yeah, that was the guy.
That was me. Yeah. And we had a big meetup group in Central Park in New York with about 2,000 people. But anyways, nature has always healed me. And since 2009, I have been researching why that is. And so I was putting it all into play that summer. And I realized why I'm here. And that is to help people reconnect with nature, to help businesses reconnect with nature, governments and organizations, and as many people as possible. And so Ned is very much an extension of that for me. Ned is, you asked about the difference between CBDs, and it's the Wild West, and there's no regulations. And yeah, people really take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And they're buying CBD isolate from China, and they're going, rock bottom prices on their costs, and they're making ridiculous margins. Cost has never been really a factor for us. We thought, let's put together an amazing product Let's create the story behind it. Let's show that story, what that process has been. And Adriaan and I honestly don't know how to do it any other way. We have to have, we're all about that quality. So that was what that journey to find Kurt was. And after finding Kurt, it was the journey to find the very best extraction process and extractors in Colorado. And we absolutely did.
I want to talk about that too, because there's a lot of questions around the potency, the pesticides, the residual solvents, the way that it's extracted. So we'll get into like a bulk of the science here shortly. But I want to go back to Adriaan standing in front of the tree, hearing the insects. At that same time, here's Rhett having this transformational experience in the desert. It's so profound to me. And this is why I connect with your company so much. You guys have this huge business acumen. You came from concrete jungle. You both went on this kind of spiritual quest, multiple thresholds breached. Then you're both standing there. I'm almost wondering, was it around the same time that you were in front of the tree and that he was in the desert having this kind of like recapitulation?
It must have been. It was August 2015. So it sounds like about exactly the same time.
How did you guys actually meet up once you both realized this is why I'm here?
Well, I went to Adriaan for advice about, once I had that vision, which the plan was to manifest it in a company called Reconnect. And I intend to still do that one day. But I came to Adriaan for advice on how to create that and how to market it and how to, tell the story around that. And Adriaan very, very graciously offered as much of his knowledge and wisdom around that as he could. And we met multiple times while Adriaan's, going to Nepal and then down to Patagonia. And every time he'd come back, we would circle back and get together face to face. And he would, give me more great tidbits and insights into, how to bring Reconnect to life. And, and then Adriaan came back from somewhere far away.
I think it was New Zealand was the last like real stop on my time away.
Yeah.
And at that point I had, passed through LA and, had come out of this. At that point, I think it was about 20 months of travel. And I had, had the whole spectrum of experiences and gone down the spiritual path. And then
what did that spiritual path look like? Because there's a deep spiritual element to Ned.
Yeah, well, it was honestly totally by accident. So I was standing in front of that tree just to close the loop on that story. And, it was on that trip, I think I must have been in my tent or something, that I just decided that instead of trying to recover and like go seeing a therapist and probably get on anxiety meds, that I was just going to go away. It was the first opportunity I had to just, put away what's ahead of me and what's behind me and just heal and look within. And so I decided I was going to go away. I chose Nepal as my first destination because it was so foreign. I've done a lot of travel. I lived in Hong Kong, but places like Nepal and India are just new territory, and I just knew that they were going to rattle the cage and take me so far out of my normal. And so got on a plane to Kathmandu and find myself in this chaotic city with just noise and just endless people and crowds. And, and then after a short week there, I retreated to the mountains and wandered by myself into the Himalayas and ended up doing about 2 weeks on the Annapurna Circuit Trail. Met all sorts of amazing people who were all on the same type of path. Nobody was there just for vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was there in search of something.
People tend to go to these remote spaces, whether it's a vision quest or a spirit quest, because they have this desire to reconnect with themselves. And it's actually, to go back to episode 226 with Paul Chek, when did we stop dancing? When did we stop singing? When did we stop spending time with ourselves?
Yeah.
We live in a pretty incredible time to be able to have these tools to help us with our wellness. And wellness starts with breathing and the micronutrients that are inside of our body. Yes, we're talking about healing powers for cannabinoids today in hemp oil and CBD. But there's a little known piece of plant technology called adaptogens that are found in the Organifi Wellness Force bundle. Now, this bundle you've heard us talk about before. This is slow-dried, organic, vegan, dairy-free, soy-free, non-GMO superfood powders, which means you don't have to go to the grocery store and buy a bunch of produce and then watch it go bad in the fridge, which I can raise my hand. My trips to the grocery store typically end up in wasted produce. Drink Organifi for just a few bucks a day. You can get your discounted bundle with these adaptogens that help us maintain an even better level of homeostasis with micronutrients fed to our system from the inside out. All you have to do to get this discount of 20% off is enter code WellnessForce at Organifi.com/WellnessForce. We made it really easy for you. WellnessForce is the code for 20% off at Organifi.com/WellnessForce. Ned, I see a fraction of Ned as a company. It's really a tool, a wellness tool to go within. Because nobody does CBD because they're trying to be like a better sprinter specifically. I mean, tangentially they might, but most people find CBD products because they're in some kind of crisis, because they're in some kind of suffering.
Yeah, they're in a prison. And that's the way I look at it, is they're stuck in a prison, whether that's a prison of insomnia, anxiety, pain, cancer. And people are stuck in those prisons. And it's through nature that we're able to thrive. And the deeper our connection to nature, the more we're able to thrive. And that's why, right now, people are not thriving as they could. They're really not. But as soon as they go to the mountains, as soon as they stand beneath the redwoods, that thriving begins to happen. And so that's really what we're trying to do with Ned, which is to take something from nature and to do it as ethically and as simply and naturally as possible, put it in a bottle, and on that bottle, put the topography of the land where it comes from. If you look at our bottle, we've got that design, that's topo, and that comes directly from our farm. That's the mountain there from which the water runs down onto the farm. And then if you look very small, the GPS coordinates are right there. So we're really trying to connect you with that experience of being there on the farm. And my hope is that, every morning or every night when you use it, you are able in your mind to transport yourself to your picture, whatever that might be, of that natural place.
Let's go through the stages then, because you talked about the prison. There's a reason that the weight loss industry, the pain relief industry is multi-billion dollars, probably tenfold actually. How does hemp oil specifically address pain management or chronic pain? Because we've been reading a lot and we've been talking a little bit about, the health benefits, the relaxation. I myself have dealt with anxiety my whole life. So I can feel a powerful difference. Like we just did a little bit of your product before the show. I'm so calm. I'm connected to you guys. I mean, it helps that we're sitting Indian style at my kitchen table. But at the same time, let's talk about the chronic care portion of CBD and hemp oil. How does this specifically address people with these long-term pain conditions? What's the research showing on that?
So we should just give context that we're not making claims here, just because that's one of the realities that we lived. Yeah. One of the realities we live with here. But, what I can say is that we have customers who range from veterans with PTSD and major injuries to, a 70-year-old woman with Parkinson's, and
ultra marathon runners
who are, feeling the effects of their races. And, we continue to get these messages from these customers that are like, holy cow, like this woman with Parkinson's I just referred to, we actually got her message through her niece who bought it for her, but she said, holy cow, I just woke up pain-free for the first time in years. So there is a lot of research that, I think it's probably best to let, the listeners kind of go and do their own digging. But, the medicine is real. And, it's also that a lot of these traditional medications and prescription pharmaceuticals, with every condition they treat, they create, a cascading effect of others.
Does it bother you at all that you can't speak freely about the types of things that you're seeing and say, yes, we can claim this just because we are in the Wild West?
It does and it doesn't, because at the end of the day, the FDA created these rules to protect people from, the bad side of the Wild West. Those companies that would, sell you snake oil or tell you like, you pay me $1,000 and I'm going to, bring your, dead wife back or your whatever it might be.
Yeah. It is a predatory industry, all angles of health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so we understand it. We're playing by the rules, and it falls into this kind of new code of ethics that at least really was instilled in my own existence beyond just business, in my love life and relationships, the way I approach, just honesty with myself, which leads to honesty with other people, the way I approach vulnerability. Take me back 3 years, I never would have been talking about a panic attack on, a podcast that goes out to so many people.
Or energetic infusions.
Exactly.
Binaural beats.
And, so it doesn't bother us per se. We wish we could really just, speak more freely about, okay, you could try this for XYZ, but, we are limited.
We've really taken the approach of playing exactly by the book. And that's why you won't see the term CBD anywhere on our bottle, which I know costs us sales, because people come to our site and they go, oh, well, it's just hemp oil. And it's full spectrum hemp oil with all of the compounds of cannabis in there.
What does that mean though? Full spectrum hemp oil. What is a spectrum and why is it full?
So a single compound, CBD is a single compound. It's cannabidiol. THC is a single compound. If you take the profile of a hemp flower or a cannabis flower, or the buds as most people know them, it doesn't have just one compound in there. It has this huge range, the full spectrum of cannabinoids. So full spectrum is really speaking to the fact that it's not just CBD and it's not just THC if we were a marijuana company. It is CBD, it's CBC, it's CBG, CBDV, and all these other cannabinoids that we're still learning about, but each has their own distinct healing qualities, and we do have a little bit of we try to create as much transparency as possible. So on our website, you'll see that, we break down the profiles of all our oils. So you'll see exactly how much CBD is in our full spectrum hemp oil. So you're not left guessing of like, okay, well, it's great that this has like 100 milligrams of hemp extract, but how much of that is active cannabinoids? And that's the whole other thing, is like, there's not a lot of transparency in the space. And, all the way from seed to bottle, as we've mentioned a few times, from Kurt to what we do with the product during extraction and bottling, and all the way to when it gets into our customers' hands. Like, we want there to be transparency.
Should there only be a focus for full spectrum, or is there anything that even comes close? Is full spectrum the gold standard in 2018 for hemp oil?
Well, full spectrum enables what's called the entourage effect. So, up until a handful of years ago, it was believed that it was just a single compound that was carrying all these healing benefits. But it's since been really uncovered, and the majority of studies now are happening around this spectrum of cannabinoids and this entourage effect, which in essence means that CBD, cannabidiol, is a very good activator for our cannabinoid receptors, and it also has a host of healing benefits, but it's also just one compound. And when CBD enters the body as a major compound, we kind of refer to it as that's the bus and bus driver. And then, when that activates all these compounds, all the cannabinoids that are riding in the back, have a chance to enter the system.
There's a major transporter, and then all these other ones that science is still uncovering, those go into the body as well.
Exactly.
I guess this is why I even have a slight frustration as I'm hearing you speak about it, because I've seen so much data, and if you go on NIH, and even if you go on PubMed, and my own personal experience, and my friends and the people in the wellness industry, the reason why CBD has such a massive bump in both SEO and just general attention is because the results continue to multiply. And it's so funny, like all truth goes through 3 stages. You know, we look at the early 1900s where anything hemp, CBD, marijuana was completely outlawed. It was the devil's brew. And now we're seeing it be adopted, and it's just a matter of years, probably within, I don't know, a couple years. Federal regulations will change. I mean, we're going to see a sweeping change about federal regulations in regards to hemp and CBD. And I know you guys don't specifically dabble in marijuana, but even for the companies that do, this is what I believe. The healing is going to be multiplied in our world through. I wonder what you guys feel about federal regulations, because this is kind of a controversial piece of the conversation. Like, what would you want to see if you could wave a wand and make any federal regulation happen? Would it be nationwide? What would that look like in a dream world?
Yeah, well, I would love to see it, be fully legal, both marijuana and, hemp. I would love to see that fully legal across the country, because not only are we seeing the benefits, on the kind of medicinal side of things, but we're also seeing incredible economic impact, and less people being put in prison, and from a systemic and foundational level, it's such a no-brainer. It's just and this is where the frustration comes in, and we don't need to get deep into this because it can turn into a dogfight. It's just the powers that be certainly have plenty of reasons not to legalize this. The fact that, cocaine is a class 2 drug, and marijuana and hemp, you could smoke a garbage bag full of hemp and the most you'd get is maybe a headache. You're not going to get high. And the fact that that's a Schedule 1 drug is
with
just
no
staggering.
medical benefit. That's the definition of a Schedule 1 drug. No
Right.
medical benefit.
And also the plant medicines that have also been shown through shamanic path, we've talked about multiple times on the show. Those are also Schedule 1. So it seems like from a policy standpoint, the Schedule 1 is things that don't actually multiply revenue for both the local and the federal level. And we can go there. I mean, look, this is wellness for us. Like, we're looking for the physical and emotional intelligence so we can live our life well. So why not talk about the things that are in place that are actually preventing that from occurring, that are actually preventing people from becoming more well? I see it, and I'd love your guys' take on this. I see it as the types of things like alcohol and cocaine and all these drugs that make people work more productive, longer nights at the office, more weekends at Buffalo Wild Wings, and all these low-level vibration activities, which have their place sometimes for birthday parties or whatever. But the things that really drive the needle for human health, why do you see this being a Schedule 1 when really we know it's just a matter of time before it unfolds?
Yeah. To me, it's a fear of being uncomfortable. And this is going like probably way too deep here, but it's that fear of those who are able to venture beyond the fold and who become comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And the rest of the people are scared of those people because it's a situation that they're both apprehensive of and envious of. And so people who use alternative health and people who use, what you showed us in your biohacking room and,
the naked Juve meditation area.
Yeah. I mean, people like raise their eyes at this, right? And raise their eyebrows. And right now it didn't used to be, but hemp and marijuana are, alternative health. And the government has not allowed research to happen on that. There's no funding for that research among universities and other institutes that would typically do that research. That's one part of it. The other part is there's a lot of money to be made in ibuprofen and in anxiety drugs and, all the other pharmaceuticals that address the exact same things that hemp does.
We see a lot of companies in pharma trying to synthesize CBD in some form, and also even like the phytonutrient profile of hemp oil. Do you guys see this as a possibility? Like, are we potentially going to see big pharma synthesize these natural compounds? Will they ever even come close?
Who knows? Because you never know what the long-term effect of something synthetic is until it comes, you know? And it's just the same thing that's
like
happening
our human body with 5G and 4G Wi-Fi. We don't exactly
Yeah,
know what's going on there.
Who knows when we're 80, like what
Right.
that's going to look like.
Yeah.
So we don't know. And, you know, what we do know that is if you extract hemp extract from a hemp flower, that it's all natural and it just came from the earth, and it doesn't need to be synthesized in a lab. And you know, it just seems so peculiar in so many ways. And you know, you touched on the paper industry too, and you know, there's cotton and you know, hemp, cannabis. I mean, they're incredible sources of.
Yeah.
You can make concrete out of hemp.
There's homes being created out of hemp. Have you guys seen this on Google?
Yeah.
We're going to link this in the show notes. Hemp has so many things, from bags to furniture to homes to even flooring. I mean, it's an incredibly powerful plant, but it was actually outlawed in, I think, I almost want to say it was a rich man. I forget his name right now, but he had a major interest in the paper mills. He's one of these, I believe in Central California, he has the biggest mansion. I know somebody's listening right now and they're like shouting the name out.
Yeah, totally.
Hearst Castle.
Yeah,
So
Was it
Hearst, it was Hearst. He had an interest in the paper mills, and that's what actually blocked and outlawed the spreading of these powerful plants.
Well, it's paper, and then you know we've heard things about the alcohol lobby, and we've heard things, of course, the pharmaceutical lobby.
Cotton.
Cotton being a big one, just because hemp clothing is so much cheaper and requires such a staggering amount less water to cultivate. It's so. All in, like it's there's, as Rhett mentioned, there's a lot of money at stake here, and that's certainly
but
an inhibiting factor.
And it's going this way, as you mentioned 5 minutes ago. I mean, the wave has crashed. It's just a matter until it all settles out. And you know, we see Mitch McConnell of all people, like, you know, getting behind it, and you know, that wave has crashed, and people are waking up to it. And I think, you know, a year ago when we started, I think, you know, we were told that the awareness level of the term CBD was maybe 2 or 3% of Americans. And a year later, today, I would say it's probably 10 times that.
What do you think people are getting wrong right now? Like, if you had to put your
there's
finger
so many
on,
things.
but the number one though, like what's at the top of the things that are most frustrating? Because there's many of you kind of leaders, like you guys are on the bleeding edge, and there's companies like you that I've been looking at and seeing what they're doing. What do you guys have trouble with? What's the misconception out there for most people about CBD and about hemp oil?
Well, you know, as I mentioned, we call it full spectrum hemp oil, which is what it is. But everybody's looking for CBD. That's the buzzword, you know, CBD. And then they look on our bottle and they don't see CBD, and they go, oh, all right, so next website, you know, or next bottle, because unless you look in our ingredients, of which there's only 2, which speaks to our, you know, dedication to the natural process as well, you'll see phytocannabinoids in there. But yeah, that's a big misconception for us, and the reason we do that again is regulatory. Our lawyers told us that that's what we needed to do, and that's what we do.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that, and it has to do with the pharmaceutical industry, which is
that's very true.
Because you know, the first drug was approved that contains CBD as it's named. So CBD, according to the FDA, is now an ingredient of a pharmaceutical drug. So saying that this product is CBD is the same as saying, you know, this horny goat weed is Viagra or something like that. And, you know, obviously a more direct correlation, but given FDA compliance regulations, we're actually not allowed to have CBD in our bottle.
Do you think that will ever change in the future?
I don't see that it would. I think there will be a lot of companies who will go into a lot of hurt because they're not being compliant.
So let's paint this picture for people listening then. We have CBD on the left, which is like, you know, its own entity. Then we have hemp oil on the right.
Full spectrum hemp oil
on the right, just to visualize this. What is the key difference between the two?
Okay, so CBD is just a single compound. It's cannabidiol. If it actually is, there are many full spectrum hemp oils that are being called CBD just because it's more easy to sell.
Yeah.
But the biggest difference is that the full spectrum means that it has CBD and a whole bunch of other good stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's honestly the closest profile that you could imagine to the plant itself. And we're not creating CBD isolate in a lab or full spectrum isolate that literally comes in kilos of white powder.
You're pressing it from the plant.
Absolutely.
I mean,
we're
literally at the farm with Kurt, right?
No, not at the farm. We take his hemp flowers and extract it at a different facility. But we do use only the hemp flowers, and that's another thing to specify is that the standard thing in industrial hemp is to use big equipment and just mass harvest the stuff, and then do a whole plant extract, which is throwing the entire plant. That includes stalks and seeds and leaves and the flowers too. But at the end of the day, you get a diluted product that does not carry the same kind of flavonoids and terpenes and trichomes. Trichomes are those like hairs and crystals that you see on
the kind bud. Yes.
On the KB.
This has nothing to do with marijuana. Yeah. Let's be very clear about that. This is not marijuana. This is hemp, which is still a misconception with people left over from the Judgment era.
Yeah, that's another big one. You know, we get a lot of older folks who say, I've lived my whole life and I've never smoked a joint my entire life. And we have their children or their nieces and nephews in many cases saying, Mom, you got to try this. Like, this is really going to help you. And there's a massive resistance to that. So, Ned, the way we've gone about it with our branding, with our graphic design, and with, everything from our website to our product itself, it's all designed to be very approachable. It's designed not to look like the other full spectrum hemp oil CBD bottles out there. It's more of a much more approachable brand is what we're going for. I hope we've achieved that.
I think so. I mean, I feel like I know Kurt, this mythical farmer.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, because you talked about the way it's extracted. Ethanol is actually the way, without high heat and pressure, it's more gentle to the plant. Mm-hmm. You use just the flower and the buds. This is where all the goodness comes from.
Yeah. Exactly.
How do you do that? What is your process that's different from the other brands out there that are leading?
Well, it goes to a belief as well. And that goes back to Kurt, who really instilled that in me. But it's a belief that plants will give you their medicine if you respect them and treat them with respect. And so, if you take those plants and throw them in a thrasher and then you extract at super high heat with massive amounts of pressure, you will get some medicine out, but you don't know how good that medicine is. You don't know what the molecular structure, what that profile looks like. So, we extract at room temperature and we extract with with no pressure. So that's our way of respecting the plant at the end of its life and asking it to give us its medicine. And it's the same thing you do. It's sort of the same principle. If you're a hunter and or if you could imagine hunting a deer and missing and wounding the animal and having to track it down, and it's terrified and it's injured and there's just bad energy when you put a bullet in its head. The meat is very different than if you get a clean shot. And so it's the same principle with the plants. We want them to have a very good end of life so that the energy that they have at that point, after they've been harvested and lived their life, is the very best energy that we can get. So that's, we're going to those lengths to find that quality product. And that's another, you asked about what are some of the challenges. There's a wide range of quality on the market. And it's very difficult for us to just tell people. We need to show people. And that's why we wanted to be on your podcast. And it's why we think podcasts are such a good platform for us, because it's about telling that story.
Yeah.
And, Adriaan is a storyteller. And that's why when I met Kurt and then I found the very best extraction group in Colorado, before I got off that street, I got in my truck, and before I hit the stop sign, I was on the phone to Adriaan because I knew it needed to have that great storyteller behind it. Because otherwise, like I said earlier, I don't know how to create a bad product. I don't want to do it. So it needs to have that great storyteller. And at this point in my career, this is about creating something good. This is about giving. This is about, following that vision that I had in the desert, which was to reconnect people with nature, and that by doing so, that will help those people thrive. And the more people that are thriving, the better off the world will be. And so, I really don't want to have a business that's not about that at this point in my career.
I love the way that you talked about hunting and the cycle of life. We know about the closed organic cycle where everything feeds into everything else. The way that you talked about honoring and respecting the plants. This honoring, respecting really goes back to earlier in our conversation when I asked, how do we make business and how do we make money? And also, how do we serve Mother Earth? Because hemp is not just for hippies anymore. Like, this is not something where we need to sing Kumbaya and be in a van. And you can do that if you want to, but this is something that athletes, professionals, CEOs, if you had to paint a picture for who this is truly for, who is this for? Who is CBD and hemp oil? Who is it actually for?
Yeah, no. So NED is really for those who are really looking to improve. If you're for everyone, you're for no one. But NED can be for anyone, as we've seen it in the customers we were telling you about. We have a massive range in customers, and that's really it. Like we want to be there as a first line of defense for people before they have to resort to doctors and pharmaceuticals. And, I will never knock Western medicine. There's always a time for it. But that doesn't mean that if I have a panic attack that I should all of a sudden get put on a Xanax prescription that I can't get off for the next 10 years.
I wonder what would have happened to me. I just wrote to our Wellness Force list in conjunction with what you're saying about my experience of getting altitude sickness at Whitney. I wonder what would have happened for me to calm down. I knew I was going to go down the mountain anyways, but for those cases where athletes or somebody hiking or somebody experiences an acute injury of the psyche or of the emotional load, overwhelm, can that be used? Can hemp oil, can NED be used in that moment with cued breathing, with mindful attentiveness to their physiology? Can it be a tool in that moment of a panic attack or of an acute emotional disorder to help manage that in that moment? Do you think that we'll see this come often more and more?
So what we tell folks, and this is based on our research, is that, when you take our products, the first thing you're going to notice, first night, you might have a better night's sleep. You'll toss and turn less. You'll sleep through the night and you'll wake up feeling a bit more rested. And I'm trying not to make claims here, but let's see. So it's really with sustained use that you really see the benefits across other areas that you just referred to and we talked about earlier in the show. So I would not say that it's an abortive treatment to a panic attack or anything like that. But with a regimen of natural remedies and with a more natural lifestyle that is connected to the natural world, you would hopefully avert the need for that acute or abortive treatment. And one of the things we've referred to a lot just in our social media and in our newsletter that goes out every 2 weeks is these restorative traditions and practices from all over the world. I'm deeply connected to the Finnish sauna, which is one of the most incredible healing and just.
Is that like a sweat lodge?
Sauna. We call it.
It's a cool way to say sweat lodge.
We call it sauna in Finland. And then talking about things like Shinrin Yoku, which is Japanese forest bathing, and that is an incredible. Call it an innovation, although how. It's a big part of functional medicine in Japan is, oh, you're having a shitty day. Oh, you're like depressed. Like walk in the forest for an hour every day for a week, come back and see me and let me know how you feel. This is actually
a prescription from a Japanese physician,
Mm-hmm.
Shinrin Yoku.
Yeah.
We talked about this with Evan Brand We're going to link that in the show notes
Cool.
to Shinrin Yoku. So I love that you brought that up. And I'm thinking about, like, I'm feeling inspired from talking to you guys. I knew this was going to be great. I had tried the product for a while. I don't have any financial interest in the product. I just like the product. But at the same time, we see these opposing forces, the growth and the bleeding edge that you guys are producing in the wellness industry. And we also see these ivory towers of control that are beginning to show cracks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just a matter of time. We're going to look back on this conversation a year from now, and we're going to realize, like, oh, we couldn't talk about certain things or claim certain things. Do you feel like a year from now we will be able to?
No, I don't. I think that, those rules will stay in place for the same reasons that we mentioned earlier about just protecting consumers, and those rules have a place. But I think there will be, a much greater awareness and acknowledgement of natural medicine and functional medicine. And you see it all over the place. Like, it doesn't just, happen with, cannabinoids. Like, there are so many roots and herbs and fungi and minerals that, our ancestors have used for millennia. And, they've just been kind of forgotten and swapped out for these synthetic products that, have been making people more ill. And, so I think there will be a return. And, that also goes to speak about Ned, like in a year's time, like, we don't want to just be a CBD company. Like, we are, searching the world for the best natural remedies that are the best of the best. And we plan to bring many of those back home under the Ned label. And, in 5 years' time, we'd love for Ned to be that alternative to a pharmacy that, you don't need to, go sifting through all sorts of literature and, the endless aisles of vitamins, and that you can just come to Ned and we'll keep it simple for you.
Yes.
And that's really our mission is beyond CBD. CBD was in our backyard. Rhett found an incredible farmer, an incredible way to extract oil. And, I feel very fortunate. He called me to start a company together, but very quickly, and honestly, even our first real deep dive in it, we realized that we can't just stop in our backyard. Like, I just spent 2 years traveling the world, experiencing all sorts of natural healing and natural medicines, and having this, epic kind of sustenance farmer up in Lapland in the middle of winter, boiling up this big black thing that I found out was chaga. And, he had just chipped it off of a birch tree on his land, and was using that natural medicine and understanding what all these things can do for us in a natural way that, again, is not bleeding our pockets or compounding issues with our health, and really just allowing us to thrive and improve.
I think you said it so perfectly, to thrive and improve, this evolution. It's funny. I think if you look at Moore's Law, where everything doubles in both efficiency and then 50% less in price, the curve for human evolution and technology, I think about 6 years ago hit. And now it's the hockey stick, where technology continues to spike in its efficiency, in its productivity. We have AI and all these things. How do you guys see hemp oil and CBD lowering the negative deleterious aspects of technology and that hockey stick? In other words, will the use of CBD with a mindful basis, will that take away from the stress load of technology? Because let's face it, we're under attack by technology right now. We have Facebook, we have Google, we are being tracked in this very moment. Even with our phones turned off, they still know we're here. What are we going to do, and how does CBD work into this and hemp oil work into this stress load that technology creates?
Yeah, well, first of all, just the way it works with the body, with the endocannabinoid system, that's one part of it. The other part is just knowing that you're doing something good for your body and that there's no guilt behind swallowing that pill. When on our label, we say, instead of directions or suggested use, it says ritual. And then it says, 1 full dropper under the tongue, hold for 3 breaths. And I always tell people, take that time for yourself, think about what you're grateful for, maybe just clear your mind for a moment, and also transport yourself to the place where the hemp is grown, because this is a product that comes directly from the earth, that is farmed in the most natural way it can be, that's then extracted as naturally as possible and put into a glass bottle that arrives at your doorstep. And that is a connection with the natural, with nature. So that is, that's another part of how that can help you is finding that deep connection.
Let's talk about the dosage then, because people are probably curious, do I have to take this every day? How many times a day should I be taking this? They're going to get hit with technology all day long, but would it be like before a stressful business meeting? Would it be a ritual in the morning, since ritual's on the bottle? What does the dosage look like for hemp oil specifically?
Yeah, well, it's different for everyone. And it's not necessarily correlated with how big you are, or
like I'm 215, so would I need to take more?
Not necessarily. It's about your endocannabinoid system and what that's asking for. So we always recommend people start with the recommended dose, which is 10 milligrams. And it depends whether or not, if it's for anxiety or it's for joint and muscle pain or inflammation. We would recommend different times of the day. If it's obviously for trouble sleeping, we would say before bed. Some of the other symptoms, again, without making claims.
I love how safe you guys have to be. I respect that. That's cool.
You don't see that from other supplement companies, but before bed or sometime in the morning. What I do, I'm a runner and an ultra marathon runner. I'm constantly inflamed, constantly with achy joints and muscles. I use our body butter in the morning, and I just lather it all over my knees and my hips. And then before bed, I do about 20 milligrams before bed, and I sleep like a champ. And I know that it's working for me overnight. And, I enjoy that little ritual before bed.
I love this recovery aspect, because research shows and common knowledge shows that the training is actually where you tear the actin, myosin, and the sarcomere, but then your rest and recovery is actually where you grow. Yep. So if you have a tool to help you recover better, then you can go train harder the next day. You can do whatever you want. I'm curious with the local, when you put on the rub, it goes through the epidermis. Does it hit locally the spot that's inflamed? Does it have to go through a different portal or transporter, or does it go right there?
It goes right there. Now, it goes into the entire bloodstream, but it does seem to focus in those areas where you need it.
Okay, because we've all been sore and we've put on like icy hot or something on our body. So I'm just curious with the CBD locally when you apply it to the muscle area. And I think stacking the two, so you have many different products. You have the balm, you have the oil that you ingest under the tongue, you have the rub that you put on the muscle tissue. Are there any other products that you guys see on the horizon? Is there anything else that you think is really going to serve people in their wellness?
Yes, many. It's the short answer, but we will be introducing a new category of products.
Can you tell us what it is?
Can we?
Yeah.
Definitely. All right, Wellness Force exclusive.
All right, this is a Wellness Force exclusive. So magnesium is our next category, which is another regulator in our bodies. And about 75% of Americans are deficient of magnesium because it's just not in our food anymore. And it's an incredibly essential compound. People with magnesium deficiency suffer from lethargy and suffer from muscle cramps and depression. And, I guess what we won't disclose is the way we'll be introducing it.
Okay.
We found some ways more effective than others, and we're going to be introducing a category for magnesium that is sourced responsibly and, following a similar format, because we want all our customers to know what the ingredients are, where they came from, know that they're made in small batches with care, and that they're made by extraordinary people.
The more I dive into CBD hemp oil, just in general, this industry, it seems like every year it doubles over in reach and in magnitude. It's just a matter of time. And I did say that a year from now, things will be different. I want to play devil's advocate, though, because a lot of people see CBD as something that, because it'll be adopted federally soon, that there won't be any margins and it won't be as big as people think it's going to be. What do you guys project in the next 3 years or so, CBD hemp, this industry in general? Where do you think the margins will actually be for people that are interested?
Well, I think it's, you have Chevys and you have Ferraris in any industry. And, I think for the companies that do it right, there will be sustainability in that business. There always has, and there always will be across industries. They're the ones who really do it right and look after their customers, look after, the people they do business with, so we're less concerned about the sustainability of our CBD business. We are certainly thinking about these other categories as, business opportunities as well. But at the end of the day, we're really just trying to aggregate the best of the best from around the world. And we truly feel that if we do things the right way, from seed to bottle, from, magnesium field to bottle, whatever it might be, that we will sustain as a business and we will thrive.
This has been the coolest conversation about hemp and CBD I've ever had, and we just happened to record a podcast about it. I love this so much, you guys. The website is helloned.com for one question that really resounds deeply for all of us, and it's wellness. The definition of this wellness, looking at both of your pasts from coming from the freaking concrete jungle where you had panic attacks and you were forced to be in a village in some desert somewhere that you didn't want to be on a mattress laying there, and knowing what you guys understand now about the phytochemicals and the healing that can come from these plants. I'd love to go one by one. How would you define wellness in your life right now? Adriaan, how would you define wellness?
Wellness to me is simplicity and balance. My life 3 years ago was consumed by work, my love life, and my social life, or work, women, and partying, if we want to be more colloquial about it. And, the way that I lived that life was just full of chaos, and there was no simplicity and there was no balance. And I really do think that's what led to my burnout, that I was not being honest with myself, and I wasn't listening to myself. And so simplicity is huge. Like I used to have a huge closet full of suits and clothes and whatever it might be. That's all gone. I've found an amazing partner in my girlfriend, Brittany, and she's all I need. So by simplifying all these aspects of my life, and Ned is really the cherry on top. These other things enable me to put, my creative energy and my intention into Ned. So simplicity and balance.
Brittany just blushed because you gave her such props on the show. How would you define wellness, Rhett?
Yeah, it's it's been hard fought, but man, I'm well right now. I really, really am. And I'm just getting, better and better too. It's great because wellness to me is about being in alignment with who I really am and with my values. And, your email post from a couple weeks ago really resonated with me because I was where you were with that sledgehammer moment. I've had that. I'm 4.5 years removed from it, and I have absolutely risen from those ashes. So I know you will too. And I thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable with that experience. Very, very, very powerful. But for me, it's about being in alignment. And that started with moving to the mountains, to Boulder, Colorado, and to pursuing this destiny of mine, which is to help people reconnect with nature. And the active day in and day out of pursuing that is bringing me incredible wellness. And, there are times too when I have not, walked the talk, when I've let, a week or two go by where I haven't been to the mountains or where I haven't even worked out. I'm just in the office working. And I say I'll work out in the evening and it doesn't happen for a week or more. And, I'm getting away from that where I'm actually really, walking the talk. And, I'm making a big step that direction and spending, my wife and I we're under contract right now on a house in the mountains. And my daughter, Sienna, is going to grow up with an endless backyard. And she's going to have that experience because I believe so deeply in it. And my wife does as well. The house happens to be beautiful for her. So that definitely helps. And, just living in alignment, living in the place of integrity from which I now find myself.
Thank you for your definitions, because I think this universal question of like, what is wellness? It's such a never-ending answer. And the way that you guys have come on the show and bared your authenticity and just talked about what's really up for you, this is what I've connected with. This is what everyone in the Wellness Force audience has connected with. On social, you're Ned. The website, again, is helloned.com. You guys...
Social is actually
social is Meet Ned. Okay, so let Adriaan, let Rhett know that you heard him on Wellness Force. We're going to be talking about this so much more in the Wellness Force group as well. It's wellnessforce.com/group. Rhett, Adriaan, thank you so much. I want to take a breath here and just thank you guys and acknowledge you for the impact that you create in wellness. And guys, the first line of defense, if you're listening right now, it's your breath. And right after that, it's your stress reduction. So if you're looking for something to reduce your stress, go to helloned.com. Make sure you let them know you heard them on Wellness Force, and we'll be doing some fun things in the future with Ned. I think this is just the beginning of a cool relationship. Rhett, Adriaan, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Seriously,
thank you
Josh.
for having us.
It's leading with vulnerability, as we discussed.
Thanks,
about.
man. Hey, my friend, thank you for hanging out and growing with me on today's show. Remember to hit subscribe, share this podcast with somebody you care about that you think gets to hear this message. Support the show by leaving a 5-star review for the podcast right now, simply by tapping on your show artwork on your iPhone. Click that purple link that says review this podcast. It helps the show reach more conscious and smart people like you, and your voice will attract more world-class guests that want to come on the show. So let them hear your voice. For all the downloads, videos, links, and free resources mentioned on the episode, go to wellnessforce.com/radio. And while you're at my house on the web, join us in the Wellness Force community newsletter on that page, and I'll send you 4 free guides around staying healthy with your eating, moving, and sleeping while you travel. But don't let this conversation stop here. Join a group of people like you over at the Wellness Force community Facebook page. This is where we talk about the things that really matter. We share our wins, inspirations, struggles, and a lot more. So join us, tap on the show artwork on your phone, and hit that purple link that says join the Facebook group, and I will welcome you at the door. Okay, now you get to go out into your world and create impact for the people that you care about. So until I see you again real soon, I'm wishing you love and wellness.